Hello, my name is Jewel, and today I'm gonna read from Chapter 3 of my book. Chapter 3 The Eyes in the Bush. At 3 in the morning, despite being exhausted from a day spent unpacking boxes and organizing his new room, Henry lay wide awake, his mind racing. With a sigh, he gave up on sleep. He stood up, walked to the window, then peered out. A light fog clung to the ground, dimly lit by street lamps that cast an eerie glow over his new neighborhood. The houses stood in neat rows beneath the inky sky, clear and dotted with stars. Henry went down the stairs, walked through the living room, and carefully pushed open the sliding door. Standing in the middle of the garden, he gazed on the moon and the stars. Henry thought about the ball of light he had first seen outside his room, of which he had searched the house for. The ball of light had been on his mind incessantly, but he had mentioned it to no one, not even to his best friends Lucien and Georges, whom he had spoken with over the phone just that evening. It was a strange situation, and Henry didn't know what to think. But one thing was certain, something odd was happening. A mystery seemed to be just around the corner, one that could involve his bracelet, the baby leopard cub, and perhaps even the electric ball of light he had encountered. Back in his room, Henry nestled under his blanket, his mind still swirling. A cool breeze from the slightly open window ruffled his hair, and the familiar smell of his blanket filled him with a sense of calm. As his eyelids grew heavy, Henry nestled deeper into his pillow. The world outside remained peaceful and still. Monday morning arrived, gently nudging Henry from his slumber at 7:45. He quickly brushed his teeth, donned his crisp new school uniform, and hurried down the stairs, the smell of warm toast already drifting through the air. After breakfast, Henry grabbed his helmet and with his mother cycled through the cool September morning to Harrington Academy. "Here we are," said his mother, dismounting her bike. Henry ran his eyes over the stone-colored buildings and the creeping plants that were hanging from some of the rooftops. He watched as children greeted one another with excited hugs and loud shouts. Stepping closer to the gates to get a better look, Henry held onto the straps of his backpack as he studied the large field at the front of the school. Some children and teenagers were running around, with groups playing football and a game with bats and a soft, squishy ball. Despite how normal everything looked, Henry felt a shiver run down his spine. The old school looked like a place full of hidden memories and whispered secrets, and he couldn't help but notice the squirrel standing on a tree branch, staring at him. Why was it staring at him like that? Like it knew him or wanted something from him? "I'm sure you'll fit in just fine, Henry," said his mother. Henry nodded absently. "I've got to stop thinking about the ball of light, the leopard, and his bracelet," he told himself. As Henry watched the squirrel scuttle away, his mother approached the teacher standing at the main gate, greeting the students with a warm smile. She spoke to the teacher, who provided instructions for getting to the main hall, and Henry was soon walking through the corridors of his new school, footsteps echoing off the tiled floor. Sitting down, Henry fidgeted, his curiosity bubbling over. He had taken no time at all to find the main hall, and after speaking to a teacher, had sat it down in a row of empty seats. Apparently, he was early, and the assembly would only start in 10 minutes. Looking up, Henry admired the high ceiling supported by wooden beams. He looked at the kids around him, some of whom were sitting some distance away, with others milling around, including a few girls standing in the corner of the room, chatting excitedly. A small, unsettling twist coiled in his stomach, an inexplicable feeling that someone was watching him. Henry took in a deep breath, redirecting his mind to the simple yet charming hall he was seated in. Standing up gingerly, he slipped out the hall. Soon, Henry found himself in a cozy reading nook bordered by large glass windows overlooking the school field. He watched a group of children play on the wooden playground, then shifted his gaze to the brick walls that enclosed the school. Beyond them, tall trees lined the perimeter, with no buildings in sight. Henry stepped out of the reading nook, and as he did, he nearly bumped into a teacher wearing a yellow skirt and a black top. She had dark, curly hair and beautiful brown skin. "Oh," the teacher exclaimed. "What's your name?" she asked kindly, her initial astonishment softening into a warm, dimpled smile. "You need to be in the hall now, you know." Henry's eyes darted to a nearby wall clock, and they widened in alarm. "I'm so sorry," he said quickly. "I got curious and I must have lost track of time." The teacher smiled again. "No harm done. Come on, why don't you follow me? I'll just drop these books off in my classroom and we can head to the hall together." As they walked through the corridors, Henry discovered that the teacher was Miss Sharma, his new class teacher. "What are your favorite subjects?" Miss Sharma asked as they passed colorful artwork. Henry thought for a moment. "I like science and maths. Geography is cool too, and I like reading and writing, and art, and music, and sports." He grinned sheepishly. "But I think my favorite part is probably lunchtime and break time." Miss Sharma chuckled. "That's fantastic, Henry. So you basically like everything about school?" "Well, not everything," Henry replied with a smile. "But definitely most things." Henry's first 2 weeks at Harrington Academy flew by. By the end of the second week, he'd fallen into a routine so natural, it felt as though he'd been there forever. Each morning, he cycled to school with his mum, followed by a bit of outdoor play before the bell rang. Breaks were spent with new friends, mostly on the football field, but sometimes they wandered to the wooded edges of the grounds, where a shallow brook wound its way through the trees. He especially enjoyed his science and art lessons, where Miss Sharma's enthusiasm sparked his curiosity. Lunchtimes were full of chatter and laughter, and Henry quickly felt at home. For 2 whole weeks, the ball of light barely crossed his mind, fading into the background like a forgotten dream. The mystery of the baby leopard still tugged at him now and then, but it seemed far away, drowned out by the rhythm of his new life. One cool September afternoon, Henry lay back against a tree in the wooded area, twisting the woven bracelet on his wrist. He had been considering the after-school clubs. He was leaning towards joining both the running and rock climbing clubs, but his mind kept wandering. Milo, his best friend, sat beside him, watching the other kids play. "Do you ever miss home?" Milo asked, his voice breaking the quiet. Milo had mocha brown skin and poofy hair, and had just moved from Vancouver because his dad had taken a position at the University of Cambridge. "I do," Henry said. "Quite a lot sometimes." Milo leaned against a tree. "What do you do when you miss it?" Henry shrugged, twisting his bracelet again. "I think about my favorite stuff, like playing football with my friends or the smell of Mum's ratatouille on the stove. It kind of helps, like I'm not so far away." Milo nodded thoughtfully. "Yeah, I get that. I'll try it." The bell rang, signaling the end of break. "Race you back to that wall," Milo grinned. Already getting to his feet, Henry grinned back. "You're on." That evening, Henry settled in the back garden of his house, surrounded by the soft twilight of the orange sunset. The air was still, heavy with a subtle symphony of evening sounds, the rustling of leaves, the distant chime of church bells, and the occasional flap of a bird returning to its nest. A faint breeze stirred the air, carrying with it the early scent of the fading day. Henry stretched his legs, leaned back against a tree, and reached for the novel resting by his side. Yet, as he flipped the page, he found himself pausing, his gaze drifting beyond the fence. to the field beyond. Something about the quietness felt different. The sounds of the evening were all there, yet beneath them, an odd stillness lingered. Henry brushed the thought aside, focusing again on his book. A faint creak from the old oak tree above him made him glance upward, where a bird nestled in the crook of a branch. He smiled, reassured by the ordinary sight. But just as he began to relax, a sudden rustle shattered the calm. His head snapped up, his breath hitching. He scanned the garden, his eyes darting between the shrubs and the tree line. Then he saw it, a small white puff squeezing through the narrow gap beneath the fence. The snow-leopard cub was back. Henry's pulse quickened. He wanted to call for his mother, to have someone else confirm what he was seeing, but the words wouldn't come. The cub darted towards the old tree at the end of the garden, its sleek body moving with an almost unnatural grace. Without hesitation, it scaled the trunk, its movements smooth and effortless. Then, in a flash, leapt over the fence, disappearing into the twilight. "Whoa," Henry whispered, the words slipping from his lips without him even realizing it. Henry stood frozen at the base of the tree, gripping its trunk tight. As he peered over the fence, there it was, out in the empty field beyond the garden. The cub's eyes locked onto Henry's. Then, with a swift motion, it turned and bolted. Henry's feet moved before his mind could catch up. He kicked off his sandals, scrambling up the tree with a burst of raw energy. A quick swing over the fence and he dropped down on the other side. Adrenaline drowned out the tiny voice in his head, urging him to stop. As he sprinted, the field stretched before him, endless and darkening. The horizon blurred into a smear, and the world around him shrank down to the pounding of his heartbeat and the rapid beat of his feet striking the ground. Shadows on the edges of his vision seemed to claw at him, flickering like dark hands just out of reach. The grass beneath him, soft at first, soon gave way to rough, uneven earth. Ahead, the cub's form flickered briefly in the twilight, silhouetted against the deepening sky. It slowed near a clump of trees, pausing just long enough to glance back at Henry. Then, without a warning, the cub disappeared into the thick undergrowth, swallowed whole by the shadows. Henry approached cautiously, his breath shallow. The air here was sharper, cooler, a faint metallic tang mingling with the earthy scent of the trees. The shadows were heavy, pressing down like a weight. His hand trembled as he pushed aside a low-hanging branch. And then he saw them. Thank you, and that's the end of chapter 3. So stay tuned for chapter 4. Bye-bye.